first dB or decibel measurement I want to talk about, and because there are different decibel measurements that are really important to understand the difference of, is what's called dBSPL, or Decibels Sound Pressure Level. S0, or a reference signal, is the threshold of human hearing at 1 kilohertz or 1,000 hertz. A kilohertz is 1,000 hertz, basically. And what this means is they got a bunch of people like sitting in a room, and they played a really quiet sound at 1,000 hertz. And they adjusted the volume of that sound until it was like 50% of the people could actually just detect that a sound was there. And that's what they define, that pressure, the pressure displacement of that sound is the reference value. So if you think about what's going on here, dBSPL values are generally going to be greater than 0 in any case, because most people are in an area where they can hear something, whereas S0 is like half of the time you could hear something. So if you just take a moment to just sit back and listen, you're probably going to hear something. Maybe it's your computer fan. Maybe it's your air conditioning unit. Maybe there's a dog barking outside. All of those things are sounds you can actually perceive. So what's going on here in your dBSPL measurement is you're taking 10 times the log base 10 of whatever the sound is that you're generally going to be able to hear over the sound that you may or may not be able to hear, and which is a ratio that's going to be greater than 1. You're now taking the log of a number greater than 1, which is a positive number, and multiplying it by 10. So dBSPL values are generally greater than 0. And this is where things can be deceptive. So you see these charts of like, okay, a pin falling is 15 dBSPL, a normal conversation is 65 dBSPL, a jet takeoff is 140 dBSPL. But when it comes to the actual air pressure, it may seem a little bit deceptive. When we talk about a jet takeoff being 130 to 140 dBSPL, what this actually means is a jet takeoff is 10 to the 13th to 10 to the 14th times as loud as the threshold of human hearing in terms of atmospheric pressure displacement, which basically means that if you compare a jet takeoff at 140 dBSPL to like a normal conversation at 65 dBSPL, a jet takeoff is 100 million times the displacement of air as a normal conversation. Now think about this for a second. Yeah, like if you've ever heard a jet takeoff, it's freaking loud, right? Do we really think it's 100 million times as loud as a normal conversation? I would argue to say, okay, maybe it's like 10 times as loud or something like that. And that's where, of course, that's why we use dBSPL instead of just measuring sound amplitude in terms of something like atmospheres or pascals. So that's where this sort of SPL comes into play. Now, one important rule of thumb, and this generally goes to any sorts of dB decibel measurement when it comes to sound. To get double the loudness, you basically need to increase the intensity of sound by 10x. You basically need to add 10 dB to whatever your sound is to basically get double the loudness. And this has to do with the fact that when you think about the power in your signal, what you're doing is you're having a squared amplitude, basically, a lot of times, or a squared, think about it as a squared amplitude, let's say in your digital audio workstation. So to get twice as many decibels, you're basically doing 10 times the log base 10 of some number squared, and you want to get this dB to be twice as much. So you can end up doing this ratio, and you end up working it out that you basically need to increase something by 10 dB. Now, some people say 6, and this really comes to whether you're talking about average loudness versus sort of your instantaneous peak loudness. It's a can of worms I don't want to go into, but for most purposes, I would say to double the volume of something, you're going to have to increase that fader in your digital audio workstation or on your mixing board by anywhere from 6 to 10 dB on average. And it kind of depends on the quality, like how the sound actually is. And unfortunately, there's not an easy kind of formula for that. Thanks for watching. In the next videos, what we're going to be doing is talking about the other type of decibels that we use in a music production environment, which are decibels full scale. So definitely check that out, and don't forget to subscribe and check out that Discord. See you in the next video.